Can you talk about the fact that this is the first time since 1974? Does that just astound you, or?
Absolutely. I mean, again, it just, for me in North Dakota, the way we do things in North Dakota, we lay out a budget. And again, when you lay out a budget, you have hearings, you have public. They come, they look at it. You argue, you debate, and you decide, okay, how much money do we have to spend? How are we going to allocate it? And then you pass it. Those are tough decisions, but that's what we elect people to do. And so, again, again, what I see as a House of Representatives, one thing that's unique to them is they're to present a budget.
And why it's only since 1974? Because that's when the Budget Act passed. So from every time from then on, a budget has been produced, even in the worst of times and best of times. But to neglect the responsibility now only hurts the rest of this country.
Good question. Other questions? Sure.
I represent builders and contractors in North Dakota and northwestern Minnesota. And you said it really well, Rick. I call it employer paralysis. They really don't know the future. One of the things that's scheduled to drop off or lapse or whatever you call it is the Bush tax cuts. If that happens, when it happens, if we think the economy is bad now, across the country, it's going to get a lot worse. So do we have your pledge? You're going to do everything you can do to keep those type of tax cuts in place as a model and, in fact, increase them and reduce regulation on business. It's just so much red tape.
Well, absolutely. I mean, again, going from the bottom half of the states to the top, one of the top states in business climate, it's about reducing regulation that's just burdensome, but having good regulation that's important. It's about keeping taxes low and letting people invest, again, back in their business and doing those things. You know, the one thing that scares me is we had a budget meeting here in Bismarck recently, and that showed for the first time in a long time that North Dakota's income tax and sales tax collections are below forecasted revenues. So what we're seeing nationally, this paralysis, is really happening here in North Dakota now. And so if, again, the Bush tax cuts are set to expire December 31st, 2010, what's the plan for January 1st? We don't know. We don't know. And that's what has companies paralyzed. We need to have a long-term plan. We need to know where we're going. And when you do that, then companies and people are willing to invest.
And look at North Dakota. We were up in Minot, and you have energy. But then you have a cap and trade bill that's sitting out there, not knowing whether it's going to be passed, so people are holding back. But at the same time, you have this administration with their EPA trying to pass a cap and trade bill, even if it doesn't pass the floor. That will systematically affect North Dakota and everywhere else. You have a current member of Congress who will sit back and say, oh, but I voted against it. Well, what did he do to bring other people to the table to defeat it? If he has this high seniority, then why does Waxman, the chairman of Energy and Commerce, send a letter against your own pipeline to hurt North Dakota? If he had seniority, another member of his own party would have never done that. That is why you have the clearest difference in this race of anyone across this country. You have an individual that showed the leadership in a time of crisis. To one, show the leadership to put us back on the right track, and another that has neglected it and not even led to do a budget. That is a fundamental difference. If we're to turn this country around, you can't have somebody voting with San Francisco 97% of the time. You know, my kids come home with a 97% on their grade. They're an A+ student. And unfortunately, Pomeroy is an A+ follower to Nancy Pelosi.
Other questions? Any other questions? Sure.
I guess I have to ask you, you know, you mentioned that you have Congressman McCarthy with you today because, you know, it's similar to the agriculture and oil in California. What is your stance? You know, we all know that Congressman McCarthy has, you know, opposed the current farm bill and, you know, opposing the development of homegrown energy. These are things that are kind of near and dear to the growth of North Dakota. What's your stance on that?
Well, first you want to see, if you look at the farm bill, when I sat on the Ag Committee, I voted for it. It wasn't until the Democratic leadership grabbed a bill that was bipartisan, where we put together for the agriculture of the future, that the Democratic leadership went and put taxes on it. Put taxes on it to hold us back. And then who followed that? The leadership went and twisted arms to have individuals vote for it. But no, that's the fundamental difference. That's putting politics before people. Instead of saying, here's a bipartisan bill and an agricultural committee that sets out the agricultural future for this country that both sides voted for and got it out of committee. But no, the Democratic leadership went and fundamentally changed it without being in committee on the taxes that fundamentally harm us. That's the difference. That with Rick Berg there, we can actually have a bill that comes out of committee bipartisan, that actually can come to the floor without the taxes, that can actually help this country grow to compete worldwide like we should be.
Thank you. I mean, obviously what I've sensed as I've gone around the state is people want solutions to these problems. They don't want more rhetoric. And whether it's Republican or Democrat in the North Dakota legislature, the major things that we've passed were passed bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats. And so I think that's what we need to do, is we need to have solutions that move our country forward. So, any other questions? Okay, thanks everyone for coming, and enjoy your weekend.